The Century Quilt. My sister and I were in love with Mima's Indian blanket. We fell asleep under army green issued to Daddy by supply. When Mima came to live with us, she brought her medicines, her cane, and the blanket I found on my sister's bed the last time I visited her. I remember how I'd planned to inherit that blanket, how we used to wrap ourselves, play in its fold, and be chieftains and princesses. Now I've found a quilt I'd like to die under. 6 Van Dyke brown squares, 2 white ones, and 1 square the yellow-brown of Mama's cheeks. Each square holds a sweet gum leaf, whose fingers I can imagine would caress me into the silence.
I think I'd have good dreams for 100 years under this quilt, as Mima must have. Under her blanket, dreamed she was a girl again in Kentucky, among her yellow sisters, their grandfather's white family nodding at them when they met. When their father came home from his store, they cranked up the pianola, and all of the beautiful sisters giggled and danced.
She must have dreamed about Mama when the dancing was over, a lanky girl trailing after her father through his Oklahoma field. Perhaps under this quilt I'd dream of myself, of my childhood miracles, of my father's burnt umber pride, my mother's ochred gentleness. Within the dream of myself, perhaps I'd meet my son, or my other child, as yet unconceived. I'd call it the Century Quilt, after its pattern of leaves.
Okay, so identifying the speaker is Marilyn Nelson Wainick, and we inferred that she's a young adult, she's a female, and she's from the middle class, and we inferred her age because she's looking back on her childhood, and then she goes to say, I'd meet my son or our other child as yet unconceived, so she hasn't had children yet, which usually means she's in her later 20s, mid-30s. And then to tell about the speaker from her point of view, we can see that she's from a mixed race background from Native American and white, and you can tell from Indian blanket and the color of their skin, and she's talking about an interracial relationship with the white family, but she mainly loves her North American heritage because that's basically what the poem is about, her Indian blanket and her Mima. And she's writing it because she's nostalgic. She loved her childhood, and she obviously had good memories with the blanket and her sisters, and it was a very dreamy time.
Okay, and so who are the readers to whom this piece is directed? So it's going to be, it says right here, for Sarah Mary Taylor. And does this speaker specify an audience? Yes, it says for Sarah Mary Taylor. And the assumption is that for who it is intended for, so it's about quilts, and she is a quilter. It says it right here. So it would make sense that this poem would be for her, whoever Sarah Mary Taylor is. And the purpose behind the text is that she's reminiscing on childhood memories and communicating her love for her family. So you could say the whole first paragraph right here. She's talking about her sister, her Mima, and her family, the Indian blankets, and how her and her sister used to play, dress up as chieftains and princesses, and all of the memories of her childhood are all positive. They're all painted in a positive light, whether it's her Mima, her sisters, or her father, her parents. And how does she convey this message? By recollecting on good memories and being hopeful about the future. So she talks about the quilt over here that her Mima had, and then now she said she's found one, and she's dreamed of herself, of her childhood of miracles, and father's burnt umber pride, my mother's ochre gentleness, and now she's talking about the future.
What topic, content, and ideas are included in the text? So this poem has multiple subjects. She talks a lot about the quilt because the quilt has a lot of meaning for her life. She talks about Mima. She talks about Mima's white family. All of these things are kind of tied together in the subject, and they all relate to each other and how she describes her life and her family. The author, how does the author present the subject? She is positive about her Mima and the quilt, but she doesn't talk about her white family as positively. We infer that there's an interracial relationship taboo because of the time period that we believe this poem takes place in. The attitude of the author, she is nostalgic, she feels adoration, she's reminiscent, emotional towards her childhood. She has fond memories of that and displays that through the words in the poem. So her word choices and her syntax all reflect how she feels about the quilt and her family and all that. She uses imagery with colors, a lot of colors, like army green, yellow, brown. She describes the dreaming about her mama. When the dancing ends, she says she must have dreamed about mama when the dancing was over, a lanky girl railing after her father through his Oklahoma field. She uses a lot of diction. She says her beautiful sisters, miracles, her father's burnt umber pride, and her mother's ochre gentleness. So all these emotional, not emotional, but words that evoke feelings in people help her portray her message.